leadership. So my name is Melissa Sullivan. I am the Regional Sport Consultant for the Valley Region for Sport Nova Scotia. I am also the Chair of the Shattering the Glass Committee, and I am a member of the Valley Female Leadership Network. I'm a trained Canadian Women in Sport Leadership Workshop facilitator. I'm an athlete, a board member, and like many of you, a female leader within Nova Scotia. I'm so honored to be the MC for this breakout session for Shattering the Glass, and I'm so excited to learn more about the 3 female leaders that are joining us this evening. So in addition to Sport Nova Scotia, I would like to thank our partners who helped shape this extraordinary event: Canadian Sports Centre Atlantic, Support for Sport, and the Government of Nova Scotia. So as I mentioned, our female leadership networks have really supported this event. So this session tonight is being supported and hosted by Fundy Female Leadership Network, which hosted the Shattering the Glass event last year in Millbrook. And previous to that, 2 or 3 years ago, South Shore had hosted it in Bridgewater. And before we kick off tonight's session, I just wanted to quickly touch on Resport, an initiative and program designed to test ideas that have the potential to make sport more accessible to all Nova Scotians. Regardless of your age, gender, income, or race, we want to ensure that everyone in Nova Scotia can access sport and stay active for life. If you have an idea of how our province can make sport more accessible, whether you're in Barrington, Windsor, Oxford, Musquodoboit, Truro, or Member 2, you can visit our website as you see on your screen and submit your idea. And our promise, our Resport promise to you is simple ideas can change everything. And throughout our virtual conference, we're using some hashtags, so feel free to use some hashtags tonight as your Oh, I got muted there for a second, sorry. Feel free to use these hashtags so to kind of promote our opportunities through social media. As well, if you've missed a session, you can contact the email on your screen there to access the recordings or view them on the Canadian Sports Centre Atlantic YouTube page. And on behalf of the Shattering the Glass Committee and our partners, I would like to acknowledge that our offices are in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We are aware that there are participants joining from all over and welcome each of you to share where you currently reside. And you can do so in the chat if you would like to. So just a couple housekeeping items during the session. If you can keep your camera turned off if you're not a presenter, and mute yourself to reduce background noise so we can be fully engaged and listening. You can change your Zoom viewing to speaker view. So this can be done by clicking on gallery view button at the top of your screen and changing it to presenter view. You can change your username to your full name so that you can receive a credit in the locker, which will ensure happens. And you can direct any questions in the chat box. And if you would like to speak aloud, please either simply raise your hand or message one of the Shattering the Glass hosts to then unmute you. And again, if you're experiencing any technical difficulties or have any general questions, please message Shattering the Glass host and they can support you. And just as a reminder, we have over 100 people registered for each session. So if you are registered for this coming Saturday, please do attend so we can kind of maximize our participants. And as I mentioned previously, our sessions will be posted on YouTube, so they are being recorded. As well, the sessions may be posted on Eastlink Community TV. And last but not least, we request that you actively participate in polls. So we will be launching our first poll to engage you. So the first question is, what is your role in recreation and or sports? And where are you joining us from? So we'll give you a few minutes to fill in this poll. Just waiting on a few more participants to participate. We're at about 80%, so we'll give you a couple more seconds. All right, let's see the results. So 23% of us joining tonight are sport administrators. The next highest is coaches. We have 19 coaches joining us. It's pretty incredible. And where are you joining us from? So within the central region and HRM, we have 35%. Fundy region is at 12%. That's fantastic. Valley region is at 19%. So great. And outside of Nova Scotia, we have 12% joining from outside of Nova Scotia, which is pretty cool. Thank you for participating in that. All right. So this brings us to our breakout session, Growing Community Through Leadership. And as you'll see on the screen with me, I would say up here with me, Joy Galloway-Jones, who is an athletics coach and multisport athlete, Meghan MacEachern, who is a rugby coach, and Elisabet, Astatkie, who is a student athlete and social justice advocate. So welcome. Thank you for joining me tonight. We're so excited to have you. And before we kind of delve into hearing more about your leadership journey, I would like to invite our participants to do a little bit of self-reflection before we kind of kick off the session. So my question to everyone, including our presenters, is what is one thing within your role or organization that could create a more inclusive culture for females in leadership? So if you could take, a moment of your time and of kind of quiet reflection and kind of write it down in the notebook that you're using to do some engagement tonight. All right. So without further ado, we will get started and I will introduce our speakers. So Joy Galloway-Jones has been the cross-country running coach for NSAC and Dal AC since 2009. She is the Team Mi'kmaq athletics coach for the North American Indigenous Games. In addition to coaching, she has officiated basketball for the last 14 years and in Colchester County since 2009. Within the past 4 years, Joy has become a recreational triathlete where she participates in sprint distance events. She was also a recreational curler in the Colchester Firefighters League. Outside of sport, she is an instructor and manager of work integrated learning for the Facility of Ag at Dal AC, and is the captain of the Truro Fire Brigade as a volunteer. Welcome, Joy. We're so excited to have you here with us. Next up is Meghan. Meghan resides in North River, Nova Scotia, and grew up in Colchester. She is a program development and research associate with the Center for Research with Vulnerable Women and Youth. She has been a community level coach in rugby for the last 10 years in the Fundy region and is the current head coach of the local high school rugby team. She has a passion for social justice, engaging young people, and supporting equitable grassroots sporting opportunities for all. Welcome, Meghan. And sitting beside you is Elisabet. She is a first-year student, engineering student at Dalhousie University. She enjoys playing piano, making art, and being a social justice advocate. She also enjoys playing rugby. She played rugby all 3 years of high school and became an involved member within her local rugby community. She volunteers as a coach for youth rugby programs and, along with some of her fellow high school teammates, helped create an after-school rugby program for junior high students. She has attended Fundy Female Leadership Network events in the past and is excited to be given the opportunity to participate in this year's Shattering the Glass event. So welcome. Yeah, like I said, kind of leading up to meeting you this evening, it's an honor to meet you and moderate kind of this discussion of influential female leaders. So kind of before diving into some of the questions I have for you, I would like to invite you, Joy, and Meghan and Elisabet, to share your leadership story and how you've navigated building community through leadership. So I'll start with you, Joy, and then over to you, Meghan, and then you can kind of end it off, Elisabet, but you'll kind of have about 5 minutes to kind of share your story. So over to you, Joy.
All righty then. And if you hear my puppy whining, I apologize. I've locked him out of the room, which is something I don't typically do because he likes to climb on my lap. So I guess it kind of started when I was in grade 4. Because a friend and I decided that we would become the first girls in our town to play in the boys baseball league. And it was a very conservative town and with very gendered attitudes. And this was in the 70s. So that kind of tells you how old I am. And then I would also play pickup football with the boys. And at the age of 12, I was actually asked to join the football team. And at that point, my mother explained that I was a girl, and she told me I needed to start acting like one. So that was kind of a point in my life where I decided, you know what, this isn't right, and we're gonna change some things. And in high school, I decided to swim, and I played basketball and volleyball and track events, and did a bunch of other things. And then I went on to university, and being only 5'3" and 1/8, I still played volleyball, amazingly enough, but obviously I wasn't a hitter. And then I also went on and coached junior high, and I worked at a volleyball cafe as a ref. And then there was one point in 2006 when my family and I were sitting at a women's basketball game, and I thought, I could referee basketball. This is something I could do. And so I became a referee as well. And then in 2009, we moved to Nova Scotia, and my wife was a administrator at Galloway-Jones, then Nova Scotia Community or Agricultural Campus. And the students wanted a cross country team. And so she was sitting around there and she said, oh, Joy could do that. And so I've been coaching cross country ever since. And in that process, when I started out, I was the only female coach in the ACAA for cross country. And eventually there was one year, a couple years ago, that we actually had 4 female coaches. And that was really cool to be able to see that happen and to see some of the younger women who were running came back to be coaches. And I like to think that I helped make that happen because I was there for them. And then in the past year, I was able to volunteer to help out with the Team Nova Scotia Mi'kmaq team for the NAG games, which have been postponed, sadly. And then I also have served on the Town of Truro Parks and Recreation Advisory Group for 5 years. And I continue to participate in rec sports as an adult because I think one of the things that we tend to overlook is women still have that instinct and that core that you want to compete and you want to win, and that's okay. And I always just wanted to be involved in sport because I had some athleticism, and it made me feel good, and it made me feel strong, and it made me feel empowered as a female, that I could do these things. So that's kind of, who I am and where my story in athletics came from. And I enjoy coaching other people, and I enjoy getting other people actively involved in doing some sort of physical activity so that they can feel better as well. And anytime that I can show a little girl that they can do anything, and that it's okay to be athletic, and it's okay to have that competitive edge, then I've done something right.
That's so inspiring, Joy. I love that you kind of hung on to the word empowered, because just hearing you speak and kind of the journey that you've had, how you embraced kind of that competitiveness within you, and had the confidence just to, say, oh, hey, I can do that. Let's do it, and put yourself out there. That's very inspiring. So thank you for sharing your story. Okay, over to you, Meghan.
Okay, thanks so much, Melissa. And thank you, Joy, for sharing. A lot of that really resonated with me too. And I'm sure so many folks on the call. So I have with me here Elisabet, who had the great honor of coaching as an athlete, but now coaching together with her, which has been, I think, an even greater joy. So to tell you a little bit about myself, I've been coaching for about 10 years in the sport of rugby in Colchester County at, I like to say, as my famous tagline, ages 5 to 55, I think is the age range that I've been involved in, and they're all a great joy and a great challenge at times too. But my favorite for sure is the junior high to high school age range. Some people find a niche age and you really like to stick with it. So that's definitely true for me as well. So a few years ago, I became the head coach of the high school team, and I really look for opportunities to engage leaders and to create meaningful leadership opportunities for them to thrive. So I was approached by a really promising student athlete who's here today with a really wonderful idea last year. And so we're going to use our time to tell you about that experience and share some of those lessons. So Elisabet, do you want to share your idea you had?
So basically, I was one of the athletes on the CC, the high school rugby team that Meghan coached. And as an athlete, when I went to rugby, I did not know anything about the sport. I didn't even know what a ball looks like. It was just completely new to me. And I knew that like a bunch of other people would have like a similar kind of situation, like they would not know the sport. And then that makes it like uncomfortable, kind of scary to go into and join something new. So at my old junior high, I was like thinking like we could start a program there, an after school program, where we could like kind of like do an introduction to rugby kind of sessions. So I had contact with the gym teacher there. So I like got some like fellow teammates from the team, and then like the group of us, we started planning sessions. We booked gym dates. We just like made this program with the kids there. It was really cool to see.
It was amazing to watch. So when they approached me with this idea and said, what do you think? I said, yeah, you guys can run whatever program you want, and I'll be there to support you. So it was a really great opportunity to see them come into their own as leaders, but also to experience some of the challenges that we all face as women and girls in leadership positions. That they were able to achieve that and get over some of those barriers, working through, a small group of athletes that came out to join our program, and difficulty with booking the gyms and lots of the barriers that we on this call, I'm sure, all face so many times. So they got to experience those together and work through some of them. So how we set up the program was going through a few modules like the Keeping Girls in Sport module, attending events like this, the Shattering the Glass last year. The leadership group of student athletes were able to come. Elisabet and I were both part of that, getting to hear the wonderful panelists last year. So we attended that. We attended the Fundy Female Leadership Network ACE Awards and got some wonderful inspiration from Cheryl Pounder, the Olympian who visited our region to give her keynote speech. And the athletes and leaders participated in a Head, Heart, Feet, Spirit reflection sheet, which is something I was familiar with in my work with the Students' Commission of Canada. So that kind of measures youth engagement and makes sure that this opportunity was in fact meaningful for these leaders, and that it was striking a chord with them, and that they were going to take some lessons forward and be able to work through some of those.
Yeah, the sessions like that we were doing with the kids, they were like really successful in my mind, because not only were we were getting a group of students who might not normally know each other to participate in our practices that we led, people who were only a couple years older than them. So we got to actually like get to know them, like they became friends with them. We were like, there were obviously some challenges, like as Megan said, like with being a coach, with running this kind of program, because there was like the attendance was really low, but then we decided to make posters. So one day we just like made a bunch of posters, taped them up around the school, like we went around the classrooms and put them up. And then we made sure the announcements were going on more. We also, booking the space was definitely a problem because we were like the secondary thing. And of course the school would have its own sports and clubs and stuff that would need the space. So like sometimes it had to be like every like second week, or there was like some that were spaced out, but we still made sure no matter what that we were going to do our sessions and some we were going to make it happen.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so that's like my story and like Megan's story. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. That is so incredible just to see, you know, the journey that you have as a coach-athlete relationship and now kind of co-coaches and inspiring kind of that next generation of leadership. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's really incredible. So let's kind of dive into some questions here. I'll head back to you, Joy, but this question is for all of you. So when Joy's done, Megan and Elisabet, feel free to chime in. So the question is, what advice do you have for building capacity and supporting other leaders? So Megan and Elisabet, I know you kind of touched on some of your story there, but yeah, we'll hear from you, Joy, first, and then head over to Megan and Elisabet.
Okay. I guess one of the things we need to do is we need to seriously look at the differences in expectations and make sure that they make sense. So like basketball, women have smaller hands, and so there's a smaller ball, and that makes sense. In cross country, a few years ago when I was at one of the national competitions, there was a debate on having equal distances. And there were a lot of other coaches that argued that the females wouldn't come out for the teams if the distance was par with the men, so 8 to 10K. And I kept arguing with them that when the athletes get out of university, everybody runs a 10K. There's not a special 10K distance for women and a different one for men. It's all 10K. And there is no physiological reason that I know, and I'm not, you know, a kinesiologist or anything like that, or a doctor, but I can tell you that there's no physiological reason why women can't run that distance. And so things like that have to change. And then one of the biggest things that I guess that needs to change, again, in my refereeing world, is the culture. In most sports, there's a culture of abusing the refs and abusing the officials and calling them names. And, you know, I had one coach, I called a flagrant foul on a girl, and he was so hyped up that he was going to come out and yell at me, that even though I called the most difficult foul that I could on this act, he still yelled at me and told me that I didn't call a foul because he had already determined that he was going to come out and attack me. And we need to change that. We need to change that environment, that's okay, because we're losing females in those positions, and we're losing females in those activities. You know, I had a friend of mine that stopped refereeing soccer because she just didn't want to deal with the abuse anymore. In Colchester County, there's 3 females out of about 30. And that hasn't changed in the last 14 years that much. And in part, it's because of that culture, that if you don't have that machismo, or you don't have that attitude that you're so arrogant, then all of a sudden people say, well, you don't have thick enough skin. And I shouldn't have to have thick skin to call a basketball game. And so we really need to make sure that as a community and as a recreation and sport community, that we're respectful. And the more that we're respectful, the more we're going to be inclusive to everyone being able to participate. And one of my last thoughts that I wanted to say is that, you know, when one of us breaks through the glass, we all need to rally around and help with those residual shards. Because as demonstrated with the female kicker in the United States for the football team, after the glass is shattered, there's so much more to be done before it's a clear path to equity and acceptance. And we need to rally behind each other and make sure that we're back there backing each other up when stuff happens like that. We need to stand up for each other. I stood up for a young woman. She was shooting free throws, and I heard from the stands somebody make a comment about her weight. And I'm not supposed to do this, but as a ref, I stopped the game. I walked over to the fans and I said, if I hear that again, I'm clearing the gym. Or like I mentioned my wife before, and she comes and watches me referee, and whenever she hears people dissing the refs, she'll actually go position herself behind them and say, well, actually, the rule is, and she'll help educate them so that they're not quite so obnoxious. And she'll even get them to say kind of goofy things like, good call, ref. So that's kind of one of those things that helps, and it helps it make it more of a positive environment and an environment that people want to be in.
Thank you for sharing that, Joy. You bring so much knowledge and experience, and I completely agree with the rallying behind and celebrating, but also being kind of that additional support and not just being happy that the glass ceiling has been broken, but, you know, getting that path established, that clear path established, and for sure about creating those welcoming and inclusive environments for positive sport experience. There's some work happening here in the province with Safe Sport, and we're looking at some pieces around, you know, athlete and parent education and additional resources and support, kind of including officials as well. So more to come on that. But in the meantime, over to you, Meghan and Elisabet, to answer this question.
Yeah, so this question really sticks with us too. In the first thing that comes to mind is looking for opportunities to engage leaders. How do we build capacity? How do we make sports sustainable? How do we make sure that we're not feeling burnout? How do we not put too much on people's shoulders? How do we grow sport without asking one coach who's already coaching 4 teams to coach another one? And the answer to that I found, and that we're still unfolding in here with our really unique relationship, is that look for leaders. Look for people who say, hey, I'm ready to lead, and are looking for those opportunities, and listen. Really, when there's especially women and girls who are ready or open or willing to take on a position, ask them what they need. Ask them what they need to do that, and to make sure that the sport doesn't become just one more thing on their to-do list. That is a huge piece of work. And I know we're still doing that in the sports sector, in the recreation world, and everywhere that we might be touching on this call today. But we have to just ask those tough questions, because we cannot assume. And the role of a leader does not happen in a vacuum. It's collaborative work, and it has to be collaborative work. We need to engage with one another and make sure that people are feeling supported to do this work, and keep building capacity, widening our networks, and making sure that those who are willing to lead, that they are able, and breaking down some of those barriers and challenges. So part of that, and part of the point I think that Elisabet and I will make, is recognizing especially those non-traditional leaders. So those who might not be the captains of the team, or those who might not be the loudest or the first one to volunteer. So look for more subtle nuances of people who are willing to step up to the plate and to be leaders, and then look really how to foster that and make sure that they feel like they are welcome and encouraged to do so.
And I definitely feel myself being an example of that, because like all throughout school, like up until the end of high school, I would never even talk in class. Like I would not answer any teacher's questions. I'd be like the quiet one. And so I would never think of myself as being a leader, as being in charge. Like up until end of grade 12, like couldn't public speak like at all. And it's like with like these opportunities that like presented themselves through the rugby at the junior high, and Meghan had offered me opportunities to participate in summer rugby programs too. Like all of these compounded to like help make me the leader I am and help like build me up as a leader, because otherwise like I would have just been like that girl who's just quiet like all the time and just not. I wouldn't see myself as involved as I am now. So definitely I feel like you have to, it's not always the loudest person or the one who's most vocal. You have to look for anyone who like might know what they're doing, they might be like a bit smart in what's happening, and just like give them opportunities because they can grow as a leader too.
Always surprise you. And even those who might seem to have it all together, I would look at Joy in a refereeing position and think, wow, what an official. But you know, those barriers that she's still facing, we might not know that those are in place unless she voices that and says, hey, you know what, this is wrong. We need to address this. We need to address it together. Elisabet and I were chatting earlier, and I said, you know, I've been the head coach of the high school for a couple of years, and if we're playing against a team and it's by chance a coach that I don't know, oftentimes they'll bring over the clipboard and say, hey, where's your coach? I want to give them the game sheet. And I kind of like, sometimes I just think, well, I don't know, they could be anywhere, you know, who knows? And other times I'll say, yeah, that's me, thank you very much. But, you know, recognizing that if we don't have women, if we don't have girls in these opportunities and in these positions of leadership, we might never set that opportunity for girls and women to take those roles over. So being those leaders, we are breaking so many barriers, but still recognize even those who have achieved so much success are still facing barriers, and we can't be afraid to talk about what those barriers are so that we can put our brilliant heads together and use the resources to come up with solutions.
Awesome, thank you for sharing. Yeah, there's a big correlation between girls feeling like they want to participate in something. If they don't see any other females either as participants or as a leader, they're likely not going to join. So female leadership is crucial to increasing a female participation for sure. All right, so Joy, back to you. This one is specifically for you. Curious, kind of hearing some of the barriers you faced. What keeps you motivated to stay involved day in and day out, year after year as a leader? What keeps you coming back?
So the biggest thing is those little times when I know I've made a difference. So like when a young baller a couple years ago, her mom came up to me and said, you know, she decided to ref this year because of you. Or there are other times when players or parents have come and had positive comments, or there was one of the pictures that I sent in was myself and two other female referees. And one of them is Anne, who referees here with me in Colchester County. And one of them is Jen. And she actually referees for the Halifax Hurricanes. And there was a couple years ago, they set up a tournament in the Valley, and it was for coaches, university coaches, to be able to identify the up and coming grade 11s and grade 12s. And when they set that up, they wanted an all-female officiating staff. And that was one of the coolest experiences ever because it was all women. And I was able to be on the floor with two other women the entire weekend. And that was really cool. And then again, you know, other women joining the cross-country coaching ranks. And one story that I actually mentioned before when I was talking to people about doing this panel, as a firefighter, so I'm a volunteer and I carry my gear around in my trunk. And we were at this one church that had a smoke alarm go off, and I was heading back to my car and I was removing my gear. And as I peel away my turnout gear, you can see that I'm female. And this little 4-year-old came running up to me and she said, "I didn't know girls could be firemen." And it hit me that because people use gendered language, that little girl always thought that firemen were men. And even though we're old enough now, and some of my colleagues say, "Oh, it doesn't matter, I know what they mean," that little girl didn't know what they meant. And so I was able to make a difference for her. And I was able to, crouch down and talk to her and tell her, well, actually, I'm a firefighter and women can be firefighters. And so she went running to her grandparents and she said, "I'm going to be a fire girl when I grow up." And that's what keeps me going. It's those moments in time when I know that I've made a difference and somebody has looked up to me and said, "I can be there because Joy's there." And that's what keeps me going, and that's what keeps me doing it. And also having fun. When I stop having fun, I'm going to stop doing it, because I don't want to become one of those grumpy old people that just kind of turns it into a bad thing. I want to make sure that I'm positive, and I want to make sure that I keep moving things forward. And when I stop doing that, I'm done.
That's incredible. Thank you for sharing that, Joy. I feel like there's tears in my eyes because I think just in this short 41 minutes, I am so inspired by your stories already. So I can only imagine how that little girl felt when you took the time to talk to her about that. So thank you. Okay, back over to you, Megan and Elisabet. So what advice do you have as a realistic first step in creating a welcoming space for intersectional sport leadership?
Yeah, so really as a first step, before we even begin any work, we need to have the same acknowledgement that the barriers that women and girls face are tremendous and they are unequal. It is not the same barriers that each woman or girl is facing. So we have to have that as the first step. We have to acknowledge that there are barriers, there are oppressions, there are challenges. Sometimes just saying, "I'm going to be a leader," is a tremendous success before they've even begun any work. So taking that first step is sometimes part of the hardest work, but of course we know that it doesn't end there. So we have to really meet people where they are at. We have to acknowledge whatever time and energy they have to give, and we have to work with that. So we have to look for those opportunities for women and girls to be engaged that doesn't add this as something else on their list of to-dos. So we can't assume that because the way sports have always been led is the way they've always been done, that is good enough or that that's acceptable. So if we have a leader who's willing to contribute certain days a week or certain times that fit with their schedule, we need to be open in our sport agencies, our provincial sport organizations, or any community groups that are working with these leaders, and meet them where they are and be willing and open to collaborate with them and to create an opportunity that they can be engaged as a leader in a way that fits them and who they are. So that, I think, is our greatest first step. We have to ensure that those voices are heard. And of course, we're not going to hear them unless there's a platform for those voices to be amplified, because we know so many times those voices might not be as loud or heard as loud when they are shared. So we have to be actively looking, actively seeking and asking for those voices, those opinions, and lifting them up so that they are seen as paramount and as important and most important when we are looking to create these opportunities and support them. So the next step, if we want to push it even further, is to engage these gender equity groups, the Fundy Female Leadership Group, the Valley Leadership Network, these events like Shattering the Glass. We need to continue to engage these groups and have conversations that are sometimes really difficult on what's working, but even more importantly, sometimes what's not working. And look where we really need to put those resources, because the resources are there. Sometimes the opportunities to be engaged as a sport leader might not be offered equitably. So opportunities to attend a coaching conference in maybe the central region for someone from the Highland region, that might not be an option for someone if they're looking at costs as a barrier, for example. If that could be one of the challenges, that might not be an option. And if having that credential is their first step of becoming a leader, they may never get past that first hurdle. So we need to look at ways to break down those challenges, to identify them, and then to put our collaborative effort behind those barriers so then we can overcome them.
And I see like the importance in this. Like those are like the leading steps. And the reason why it's so important is when you have like a leader who is like all these intersectional factors. So it's they're female, they're this figure for other females, like who are growing up, they can see themselves in this person. And in my case with the rugby program that I was a part of, it's not only through female, we were also through age, we were leaders, we were like mentors, because they were all so close in age to us, like only like 2 years apart, 2 or 3 max. So that them being able to see us being like, wow, I know this person, this makes me more wanting to get involved in this specific sport, because then when they actually go to the high school, then they might actually have some of us on their team. And like through not only like that, like even race can make a part of it too, because I know that there's this basketball program that happens. I'm not a part of it, but it's basically the local Black community, they host it, and it's they have like they have like these tournaments, and they also have like tutoring and stuff, and it's like to be a leader, to show up for them. So not only like you're close in age, you're also like the same race. It's like all of these factors to make stuff intersectional helps to make you more connected to the people you are leading, and helps to make the leadership that much more impactful for the person being leaded, I think.
That is such a great point, Elisabet. Like I said earlier, it's kind of the see her, be her thing. Like if you can see it, you can be it. And Joy touched on it earlier with her firefighter example, right? Just the language that we use could potentially eliminate choices that young females don't see themselves as something. So thank you for sharing that. You know, a couple steps in there that you shared, which is great, not just one. So the participants we have, you know, if they've already stepped or checked off step one, they have a couple steps to work from. So that's perfect. I don't see anything in the chat here from our participants, and we do have a little bit of time. So I will kind of go to my backup question for you and just kind of throw it out to see kind of who wants to answer it. But it kind of builds on our last point about the see her, be her, but kind of the correlation between the importance of representation and the opportunity for leadership. I would like to know how you navigated this within your sport and recreation experience. Did you have somebody to look up to? If not, who was that kind of positive mentor for you? Yeah, so if you want to share a little bit about that, you can unmute yourself and chime in.
Okay, I think we might be able to add some to that. So I had my first female coach when I was in university, and I'd been an athlete for a number of years before that. So that was, and I'd been a coach for a few years before that, but that was the first time that I myself had been coached by an all-female coaching staff, and that really was a whole different world. So that was one of the first times that I was introduced to a strength-based coaching regime and what that looks like, and how we're looking for those things that people are good at when we're also offering the opportunities for them to build on some of their lesser strengths or things that maybe they find a bit more challenging. So that was really interesting, and that I think changed my whole trajectory as a coach. So I took some of that knowledge back with me here to Colchester County, and I worked with a group of young ladies, Samantha Ellis and her sister Allison Ellis, and we reconsidered our youth rookie rugby program here in the area to better align with our leadership goals and how we like to run a program and what kind of leaders we are. And we aligned it with the long-term athlete development models to be a bit more age appropriate and in a way that we thought would be a better way to offer the program. So in doing that, we grew our numbers from about 25 attendees in the summer to upwards of 100. But even more important than participants, we grew our coaching staff from the 3 of us to about a dozen. And I'm really proud to say that usually we have between 8 and 10 of those being young women and emergent adults, I'll say. So kind of high school age students who are looking for those opportunities to be leaders. So I think that is a tremendous way to set the standard. Is it's not good enough to just accept that things have always been done the way that they have, and look for ways to challenge that and trust our women and girls to make those decisions and support them. And when we do, really, really marvelous things can happen. Anything you want to add? Was there Joy has something to add?
I guess I can add something. Prior to working in universities and things like that, I did work in the recreation field, and I was actually a professional camp director. And I ran outreach programs for the Girl Scouts in the United States. And in hiring the staff that I did, at first, many of the staff members didn't look like the kids that we were serving. And I felt that that was a tragedy, because I felt that those little girls in those inner city schools and in those areas needed to look up to somebody that looked like them. And so I strove, and I went out and made sure that I was hiring people that look like them. And I diversified the staff significantly. And the really cool part about that is I have these young, diverse women who aren't so young anymore, I guess, all across the world, who were still connected. And we still have, thanks to Facebook, I know people think sometimes Facebook is a little bit overwrought, but thanks to Facebook, I've been able to maintain relationships with these young women that I was able to give them their first job when they were 18. And I was able to train them and support them and coach them through some not so good choices. And they helped me grow and understand. And they helped me ensure that whenever I'm in a position of leadership, that I offer up and give opportunities to the women coming behind me. And that I also make sure that I include that diversity, so that those young girls and those women that are looking up to us, they're going to find somebody that they can relate to. And I think that that's extremely important. And we need to keep working at it. I'm waiting for the Prime Minister to be female, but, we'll work on that one.
Perfect. Yes, I like that, Joy. Thank you for answering that question. We do have a question that came in. I know you are all busy individuals. How do you balance your personal life with all the great work that you are doing? And it wasn't directed at a specific person. So if you have some insight that you want to share, please feel free to chime in.
I'll chime in first. I have empty nest. So my 2 adult daughters are gone. They're launched. I'm free. I'm good. And then I also have freedom of time. So I work and I get my work done. But because I get my work done, I'm given enough leeway to do what I need to do at whatever time during the day. So they know that I'm going to answer my students' emails at 7 o'clock at night, and they cut me some slack when I need to go coach my cross country team at 10 a.m. in the morning. And so I'm extremely fortunate that I have that backup, and my bosses believe in me and believe that I'm going to get my work done, and just give me that freedom to do it when I need to do it.
Yeah, great points, Joy. Well, I find I get a ton of joy out of coaching, playing, being an athlete. So a lot of my kind of work-life balances are intersecting, if you will. So I'll be at practice early to be coaching, and then I quickly change my cleats and I'm an athlete. And then at the end, I'm doing this or doing that. So I find it's a really nice marriage of personal kind of leisure activities and still kind of coaching activities. But I'm fortunate to work in the social justice field, and what I do is looking for opportunities for non-traditional leaders to be engaged. And most of the time that's through programming in correctional settings, prisons and jails, engaging persons in conflict with the law. So I'm really fortunate to really live my life by working with who I consider to be some of society's most vulnerable persons. So having that mindset and looking for the strengths in others really helps me to find a little bit of happiness in some challenging things. And I know as leaders in sport, it can sometimes feel like it's more challenging than anything else. So looking for those stories of success that Joy shared, those sometimes are enough to get you through the next day and get you through a long day. Yeah.
I feel like balance, I have a hard time trying to maintain balance, because even like just as an athlete, I had rugby and piano on the same days, because even I have to leave a bit early, and I'd have to change in the car on the way to piano class to make sure I get there and am able to do it on time. And it's but with coaching and stuff, I would prioritize that. I'm okay, I have this session or this summer rugby thing at this time, and I want to make sure I get that done. I will try to do my homework and stuff before that, but it's I always held that kind of stuff at a higher priority. That might just be me, but I was I want to make sure I can do this because I want to keep getting involved in it because it's fun. So I just, since I always thought it was fun and it was an enjoyable activity for me to do that kind of stuff, I would just continue to make sure I'd be able to. So I'd make my balance centered around that.
And if I can add just one thing, I usually tell my runners, and I usually tell the university students, that running makes you smarter. And I have peer-reviewed articles to prove it. And I don't mean, and I kind of extrapolate that, because really exercise and physical activity makes it so that you can focus better. And the more that we can help people understand that, particularly women, because a lot of my instructor friends are oh no, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, and I keep telling them that if they get out and do something, even for 30 minutes, their brain will clear and they'll be more efficient in what they're doing. And that's an important lesson for everybody to learn, is that running does make you smarter, but actually it's just exercise.
That's a perfect addition. Thank you. There's a couple questions coming in, cognizant of time. We won't get to them all, but there is a comment here that I just wanted to read aloud. It had to do with your answer, Joy, about diversifying programs. Somebody said they love the idea. I think making the conscious decision of putting more females in these roles would be a great first step in creating a welcoming space for intersectional sport leadership. So just wanted to kind of highlight that and thank you for that contribution. So there's one last question here. It's specifically for Joy. How does one get involved with officiating within the Colchester area?
That's awesome. Actually, there's Nova Scotia Basketball Officials. There's a website. And if you go on, it has the different area supervisors listed. We usually have clinics. Obviously, this year's weird, but we usually have clinics that start in late September, October. And we actually have to write a rules exam every year. And so that's part of the way to become an official. But you can also email me and I'll get you connected, because I would be over the moon to get more females in this area, because I really, it's important. We need to be out there. We need to be officiating those girls' games and the boys' games, because those boys need to see that there are females that are competent and that can call a game and that can keep up with them on a basketball court. And that's important too. So yeah, send me an email. I'll get you connected.
Perfect. Thanks, Joy. And as I said, we just cognizant of time, we won't be able to answer all of them live tonight, but we will capture them and get you some answers, because I know there's some kind of populated through private messages and through to everybody. So we will get those answered. So thank you, Joy and Megan and Elisabet, for joining us tonight and sharing your experience and your wisdom with us. Before we leave the session, kind of how we kicked off with an opening reflection, I want to close with a question to participants and including our speakers. What is one thing this evening that has resonated with you, big or small, that you want to think more about or take action on? And Janice, our background tech support, is going to launch a whiteboard. So I will invite you to go up to the top of your screen to view options and select the annotate function, and you can bring up a text box here and type in what action you would like to think more about, or the idea that resonated with you, and populate that. And if somebody is taking an action that resonates with you, feel free to stamp beside it a check mark, a heart, or a star. In person, we would kind of leave the room with some sticky notes on the wall, your kind of commitment to action. So this is a way to kind of shed some light on where your heart is at. I'm seeing some great answers. Redefine the concept of leader, more respect for officials, listen to all perspectives, and spend more time with leaders like our panelists tonight. Shout out to our panelists. We need to identify the leaders within our teams and bring them along. Exercise makes you smarter. That's a great lesson. Yes. Advance women in sport platforms. Oh. Show young girls that they can be anything that boys can be. Fire woman. Yes. Thanks, Shannon, for contributing that in our chat. Celebrate the women. Having males as champions of women in sport. Yes, finding those allies that we have. And if it is easier for you to populate, what message resonated with you or what action you want to take, feel free to populate that in the chat and we'll get it over onto the whiteboard. I'm loving all the annotated hearts and check marks. So great. Perfect. Okay. I love that. Okay, so yeah, we will save that and kind of keep that, and I think we're going to come up with a little report or some stuff, because we've done some engaging pieces like this through the series, so we can kind of reflect on that. But I do want to remind folks that we have our last session this coming Saturday. It's a closing panel about creating leadership opportunities for all females, and Crystal Watson, the Executive Director with Recreation Nova Scotia, will be moderating the panel. Krista DeVoe, the Active Living Coordinator with Number 2, will be a panelist, along with Naira Smith, who's a multi-record holder for Dartmouth Crusaders Swim Club, a youth swimmer, and Kevin Bennett, who is the VP player and coach development with Valley Wild Female Hockey Association, and also the facility manager with the town of Kempsville. So a great panel happening this Saturday morning. So just reminding you about that. We also, as Valley Female Leadership Network, kind of heading into the holiday season, we're doing 2 book giveaways from Lindsay Doyle, who has recently launched her Strong and Free book. So feel free to enter. You can like us on Facebook, like the post, and tag a friend in the comments below for your chance to win. It's open now. So take advantage of that. It's open until Saturday at midnight. So find us on Facebook and tag your friends to win. So that's it for us. Actually, I think we might have one closing poll. Sorry, I think I skipped. But if you could rate your satisfaction with our session tonight. So we have very satisfied, satisfied, neutral, unsatisfied, or very unsatisfied. And Janice has also populated in the chat our kind of further extensive evaluation to kind of help inform our upcoming Shattering the Glass next year. So we can kind of take some learnings and hear from participants on how we did this year and what we can improve upon. Perfect. Thank you for participating in that poll. So that concludes our session tonight. So again, I want to thank all the participants that took time from your evening, and our presenters for sharing your wisdom, sharing your experience with all of us. So until Saturday, take good care, and we'll see you back here.